Okay, it's the fifth beginner tutorial flight SimX Los Angeles to Edwards. We're following the GPS and turn towards our final, and and the GPS and autopilot still flying the plane right now. Um, this oblong circle right here, this is a hold pattern which I pulled up with the flight management computer, which is there if you for a missed approach. The autopilot GPS will follow this flight pattern after a missed approach, and I'll show it on your. You can see it on your flight plan here. I had to select the cursor to get the cursor up here, and then we can scroll down. So here we are. We're flying from waypoint 1 to waypoint 2, which is not quite in order by name, but in order as we should be going. And the approach flight plan for runway 22 ILS, and which starts with Maury. So that's the first one, and it follows each one of these points to the runway 22. And then here is the holding pattern. So if you had a missed approach, you would fly to the runway, and then you would fly back towards Edwards EDW, and then to Maury, and then into the holding pattern, which is the circle there. That's the holding pattern. So there's Maury. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's still at the bottom here. So this is the part of the flight plan that we see currently on the screen here. So we're flying this purple line, which is almost towards Maury. We're going to select Maury right now, and I'm going to do that with the flight management computer. We use the hold button, and then page over. What next? To go to Maury, select Maury, execute. Alright, it gave us a flight path to Maury right now on the run there. So I use the FMC to communicate with the GPS. Just checking my altitude. I'm still on VORTAC lock. It's totally on the GPS. We're getting ready to switch to the approach, which uses our radio nav frequency. So 110.1, which you tune here, whatever you need, and then activate. So it switches from standby to activate. You can't tune anything on this side. So switch back to 110.1, and these are our communication radios up here, transponder and ADF, automatic direction finder. So the GPS is turning again. So we're on our flight plan on the approach. So what we need to do is set up for a landing. So we're on our approach. We've got our nav radio set up. We're going to go ahead and hit the approach button. We're going to descend right now. To about 1,800 feet above our runway altitude, 2,300. Okay, we're flying an approach. It's got us lined up. So So we're switching back to nav now. We're on our approach. We're not using we're not on the GPS now. We're now on radio navigation. And we're descending. And we'll get to altitude just below the ILS, and which will fly us to the runway. Oh, there's auto brake feature right here next to the flap indication. I'm going to go ahead and go max out and shift / to activate. You'll see your light right here. That will turn our brakes on for us when we touch down. We're looking at, here's the GPS to show you where we're going. There's the airport. So we're flying to this point right here, Edwards, right now. So once we get, so we're at our 4100. We're on approach. We're lined up left to right. Okay. We're underneath the glide scope. As we get closer, this will start coming down. Here's our glide scope indicator. So we're lined up basically. We need to reduce speed. And we're going to deploy flaps and prepare to drop the gear. Go ahead and drop gear. And we'll be going to full flaps. We're going to touch down, runway in sight. We'll touch down at about 143 knots. So we're lined up with the runway. We're using the approach, radio. Here's the horizontal display. We can change the scale of that by turning this knob. So we're 5 miles out. We should be, this should start coming down. There it is, it's coming down now. And when this gets, hopefully when it gets about right here, the autopilot altitude hold is going to turn off, and we will ride the glide scope down to the runway. So we're flying and down. Here it comes. This should turn off here in a minute. There we go. So auto altitude hold has turned off. We're descending at 600, should be 700 feet per minute, and we're flying towards the runway. We have gears down, full flaps. F8 is full flaps, F5 is full retract. So here's what we need to do as we get near the runway. After we fly over the end of the runway, we need to turn off our autopilot and the speed indicator, speed hold. And then fly the aircraft the last 100 feet. So we are getting closer, and I'm going to pause right now and approach the airport a little bit closer. Okay, we're about a mile out, or less than 2 miles, 2,700 feet. It should show us the runway indication here on the tape measure. So what we'll have to do, since we get up, when you have to turn off the autopilot and speed. We're getting close. These lights tell us we're just a hair high, but we're fine. Ideally 2 red, 2 white, green. This runway's open. So we're not getting any voice indications. We're at 100 feet coming over. Here we go, autopilot off. Speed controls are off. A little bit of flare. We're on the runway, braking, F2, reversers. So the auto brake system should have deployed spoilers for us. I don't see spoilers. We're on the runway. So I'll turn off reversers at 40 knots. This ILS tends to put you down on the right side of the runway here. It's usually not in the middle. So here we are. We're at Edwards. There's only one taxiway to the right. And you don't need landing lights. What do you mean? I retract the flaps, and there's the spoilers are out. No spoilers. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't get the spoilers. So it happens real quick there at the end. You have to turn that autopilot off, and the ILS doesn't land your airplane. It'll get you to the proximity of the end of the runway, and it'll just fly you down into the runway, basically. I could have pulled up and gone around manually, gave it some throttle or some speed with auto throttle, and then selected the hold pattern after the runway 22 waypoint and the flight plan, and the plane would have carried on, selecting whatever altitude I had for, and go fly the hold pattern automatically with the GPS. You have to turn back to your forward tack hold with the GPS switch on. And let's go look at that real quick. So I'd have to switch back to GPS here, and with the vortac, turn the approach off. So, go ahead and hurry up. This is scenery for Edwards that I've got. I don't know how fast I'm going. Not too fast. So there's all kinds of free stuff out there, and it's not too difficult. It takes time to download it, but it's available for you. I'm trying to switch between. So this one added some airplanes and stuff on the ground, and better runways. And, so here we are. We landed safely finally here. Edwards, I hope it was helpful for anybody, and I'll have some more.